giving them the ability to be the best they can be. Thank you.
Miriam Case.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's an honour to follow on from my honourable friend, the member for Watford, who made an excellent speech. And can I congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Don Valley, for securing this debate, and then other honourable members have said for his phenomenal work in supporting men and boys. And as one Yorkshire MP to another, I admire his ability to say things how they are, say it as it is, even if you do sometimes get some stick. Madam Deputy Speaker, can I declare an interest in this debate? I have a husband, a dad, brothers, nephews and 2 sons, and I was even fortunate enough to get to the age of 40 with both my grandfathers still alive. Sadly, one of them passed away recently at the age of 92, had a long and fulfilling life, including growing churches on the islands of the Torres Strait off North Queensland. And my other grandfather recently reached the age of 90. He enjoyed a fulfilling life, an amazing career, and could beat me at table tennis until the age of 80. So I'm extremely fortunate to have a family full of amazing male role models, fathers, dads, including my own husband, who right now is probably juggling tea time, homework and piano practice. So I'm very grateful to him for doing that. So it's a real privilege to speak in this International Men's Day debate, to honour all the great things that men contribute to our families, our communities and our nation, and also to discuss some of the unique challenges that are faced by men and boys in this country. Madam Deputy Speaker, men and women are different biologically, psychologically, socially. We've evolved for very different functions in society, different functions in families. Men and women are equal but not the same. And I think one of the mistakes in recent years has been to push for equality between the sexes, which is right, but without recognising important differences and without celebrating male virtues and male roles. And we frequently talk, rightly, about how to get more women into engineering or technology, but we pay insufficient attention to the decline in young men gaining technical skills and the fact that boys are falling behind girls in education. And when the traditional virtues of masculinity and male identity are portrayed as redundant or negative or not uniquely male, what is there left for young men to aspire to? It's certainly a confusing time to be a young man. I certainly will.
I entirely agree with what she's saying, and the statement of toxic masculinity is really dangerous potentially, because we set our young boys up to think that there's something innately wrong with them in the way they interact with society. Does she feel that's a problem?
Yes, I absolutely agree with my honourable friend, and I think the danger of not giving a positive version of masculinity, something that's unique, something that's positive, something that is good for society, we're actually, sadly, driving some young men and boys to the far right, who are giving a version of masculinity that none of us here would support, but is offering them something that at the moment some of the discussions in society don't. And that's why it's so important that we do offer something to young boys. I think some of the economic and social changes over the last 40 years have had benefits, but they've also had significant costs, particularly for working class men and boys. The decline of industry, and therefore skilled, well-paid, secure jobs, has caused a drop in wealth, in health and status for many men. In my constituency, the steelworks in the town of Stocksbridge used to employ 11,000 men, now it's 750. But steel jobs still pay 50% more than the average Yorkshire wage. They require skills and they confer status. But these kind of jobs are now few and far between. And the loss of these jobs and the economic and social consequences for men have been severe, and we need to consider how we can reinvest in British industry, not to go back to the past, but to pivot to the skilled, advanced manufacturing jobs of the future, like those at the Speciality Steels plant in my constituency and in Stocksbridge. Not only would a revival in manufacturing and industry be good news for men, it would also be beneficial to the UK economy, which has a terrible balance of trade. We don't make anywhere near enough stuff ourselves, and also for our security and our self-sufficiency in important materials like steel. And while industrial and manufacturing jobs have declined, the number of young people going to university has soared. Now, of course, there have been benefits to this, but there is no clear relationship between the number of graduates and a nation's GDP, and we're now in a situation where we have far more graduates than we require in our economy, and around 50% of recent graduates are now thought to be in jobs that don't require that level of academic education. And this focus, and I would almost say this obsession with cognitive credentials, with degrees, over technical or vocational skills, has been particularly disadvantageous for working class young men. Recent research shows that median earnings of men from the bottom 23 universities were less than the median earnings for non-graduates. In other words, a significant number of younger men will be better off not going to university, not to mention the debt that they'll acquire while they're there. So I'm delighted that the government is pushing a skills agenda, but we must do more to open up apprenticeships to young men. The Chancellor's announcement today that we'll move towards a German and Swiss model of skills education is great news, but we should also take another look at our enormous higher education budget, I think about £14 billion a year, and to consider whether some of it could be better employed, both for the benefit of young people and also for the benefit of the economy. As well as the decline of industry, men and boys have also suffered as a result of the decline of family stability over the last few decades. The most stable form of family, as my honourable friend said earlier, and one that has the best outcomes for children, is where parents are married. That's not a value judgment, it's very clear from the evidence. Married parents are twice as likely to stay together as non-married parents. By the time they turn 5, 53% of children of cohabiting parents will have experienced their parents' separation. Among 5-year-olds with married parents, it's just 15%. Married men live happier, longer, healthier lives, and boys with committed present fathers have much better outcomes than boys in families where they don't. So marriage is good for men and boys, and yet marriage rates have declined significantly over recent years, particularly among lower income groups. And marriage has almost become a middle-class secret. Among high-income white couples, so the top 20% of incomes, around 85% of people are married. In the lower income group, the bottom 20% of white people, only 19% are married and have much higher rates of divorce. So if you're a poor white child, you're very unlikely to have a father. If you're rich and white, you're very likely to have a father. That's how stark the difference is. And there's also been a huge rise in loneliness amongst middle-aged men as a result of family breakdown. And family breakdown is contributing to the housing crisis. As one of my colleagues earlier said, I think actually it might have been the Honourable Lady, when families break down, you need a second home. That adds to the housing crisis as well as obviously creating financial problems for the family. And the UK is an outlier amongst Western nations in that our policies and our tax system don't recognise families and they don't recognise strong couple relationships and marriage. So, for example, in the UK, we are taxed on an individual basis. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, the HMRC only sees your individual income and you pay tax on that individual income without any account of how many people that income is supporting. So, for example, if you earn £50,000 a year, which is considered a high wage, slightly more than £50,000, thinking about the tax thresholds, but you're supporting, let's say, a family of 6, you are taxed the same as someone earning £50,000 and a single person not supporting anybody else at all. And yet, as you enter the higher tax rate, you lose your child benefit, you start to have all kinds of other knock-on effects of that tax system. In other countries, in France and Germany and Canada and the US, they have different systems where you can be taxed as a household, where family policy recognises the benefit of parenting and supports families as a result. So we need to reform our taxation system to be much more pro-family, to make it easier for couples to stay together. I'm delighted about the government's Family Hubs programme, and I think we particularly need to decide how to determine how these family hubs are going to support fathers in the early years to be involved in the bringing up of their children. But I want to move on to a final issue that is affecting health and well-being of men, and particularly boys, in a truly alarming way. We have a growing public health crisis as a result of the proliferation of online pornography. In 2020, pornography websites received more website traffic than Twitter, Instagram, Netflix, Zoom, Pinterest and LinkedIn combined. For too long, society has viewed porn as a private matter, assuming that what people do in the privacy of their own homes is their own business. But it's clear that the impacts on society and culture have been significant and negative, and we must wake up to the destructive impacts of internet pornography. There's nothing mainstream about the porn now available online. Mainstream pornography platforms host vast unknown quantities of filmed crimes, videos of trafficking, rape, non-consensual sexual violence, child sexual abuse material, sexual coercion, abuse and exploitation of vulnerable women and children, intrafamilial rape, humiliation, punishment, torture and pain, all available at the click of a mouse or the touch of an iPhone. Analysis of around 130,000 titles of videos recommended to first-time users of Pornhub and other major sites found that 1 in every 8 titles describes sexual activities that constitute sexual violence. And the word teen was the most frequently occurring word across the dataset. The second most common category was that of physical aggression and sexual assault. Viewing these videos affects what men, particularly boys, think about sex, what they think is normal, what they think is acceptable. Of course, it's right to think about the impact of pornography on women and girls, and it's notable so many high-profile rapes and murders in recent years have been committed by men who are addicted to hardcore pornography, including the tragic murder of Sarah Everard. But children's consumption of online pornography has been associated with a dramatic increase in child-on-child sexual abuse, which now constitutes around a third of all child sexual abuse. So we also need to think about the negative impact on boys. Around 50% of 12-year-olds have seen pornography online, and in the UK, 1.4 million children access it every month. A UK survey found that 44% of boys between 11 and 16 who regularly view pornography reports that it gave them ideas about the kind of sex they want to try. We've seen the normalisation of strangulation during sex, of anal sex amongst young people. There was a case reported a year or so ago of a boy who raped a girl in school, and when the teacher asked him why he didn't stop, he said, "I thought it was normal for girls to cry during sex." How are these boys ever going to enjoy normal, loving, fulfilling, intimate relationships? During puberty, boys' brains develop. They have an erotic imprint where it's laid down what they see as normal, appropriate sexual behaviour. This imprint will stay with them for the rest of their life. How many of these boys will be drawn into serious sex offences? How many will endure broken relationships, broken families, or never form relationships at all? It also affects boys' health. We're seeing an increase in erectile dysfunction amongst teenage boys. And on the extreme end, a constant use of pornography can quickly lead men not to become aroused by anything other than hardcore online porn. This is why it is so important that this House passes the online safety bill when it returns, that it goes through the House of Lords and becomes an Act of Parliament. We must introduce secure age verification so no children can access pornography websites, and we must stop children accidentally viewing or deliberately sharing pornographic images with each other online. While children's brains are developing, it is so crucial that they do not have access to this extreme material. At the moment, it's completely unregulated, and I'm afraid people who say it's parents' responsibility to make sure their children don't view it are not living in the real world. Even if your child has no phone, even if your child has no computer, all it takes is a classmate to put their own phone in front of that child, in front of your child, for them to see this stuff. Your child is only as safe as the least protected child in your child's class. And it's a bit like telling parents to teach their children to cross the road safely. If there was no speed limit, no crossing points, no side of the road that you legally had to drive on, it would be completely impossible. Internet pornography is currently completely unregulated, and it is a public health disaster. So on top of the online safety bill, we also need a public health inquiry led by the Department for Health into the harms of pornography. Yes to women and girls, yes the harms to the economy, the criminal aspects, but also the harms to boys and men, to their happiness, their fulfilment, and their physical and mental health. The future social impact of this porn epidemic will be catastrophic if we don't protect our boys and girls. And I believe that online pornography is the opiates trade of our age, and we should be outraged by what our children are seeing. Madam Deputy Speaker, our families, our communities and our nation need strong, confident, healthy and skilled boys and men. It's therefore in all of our interests to invest in skills and industry, to support marriage and families, and to end the destruction of online pornography.